Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Geographic Society of Chicago's February Travelogue. I'm Nicolette Marassa from the GSC office, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Just a reminder, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please post them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We will get to them at the end of the presentation if there's time permitting. If this is your first time attending a GSC event, welcome and thanks for tuning in. The Geographic Society of Chicago has educated the public about geography and its important uses since 1898. Through services such as our geospatial technology programs, we offer unique educational experiences that harness the power of maps and the integrative tools of GIS to solve environmental and community issues. Today's travelogue presenter is Keith Yearman, street photographer and geography professor at College of DuPage. Keith, thank you for being with us today and presenting on Bangladesh.
All right, thank you for having me. So let me just share my screen. Okay, everyone is able to see this, I hope?
Yes, looks great. Thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to be talking about Bangladesh today, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with Bangladesh, it is located, well, nestled between two parts of India, and it shares a border with Burma or Myanmar. And it is a pretty small country, but one of the most populous countries on Earth. If we were to compare Bangladesh to Illinois, in terms of land area, Bangladesh is 3% larger than Illinois, but whereas Illinois has 12.5 million people, Bangladesh has 173 million. It is insanely crowded. Now, my reasons for going to Bangladesh. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of an issue here, but let me pause this for a second. The man on the right of this image is Samsul Alam, and I have been friends with his family, one of his daughters in particular, for many years. She's basically the little sister I never had, and Samsul died over the summer. And so his wife, Hasina, who you see here, asked that I go with her to the cemetery during the Ida period, the Muslim mourning period for widows. And so I did go to Bangladesh, and I've been there before, of course, but this time was a sad reason for going. And after flying 19 and a half hours one way, I was not about to turn right around and come home. So I decided that I would take 2.5 weeks and just roam the country. And here's Hasina again. And then heading into the cemetery. And I had another reason for going. Jabin here, I've been pursuing her for a couple of years. So it was nice to be able to spend time with her. Now, let me pause the screen again. What I do during my normal day is wander around Chicago, and I engage in street photography. And that's what I'm going to be presenting here in terms of Bangladesh. So street photography, it's candid shots on the street of people in public places. And so I incorporated a definition from Encyclopedia Britannica here. Uh, I think that last line, that we do not necessarily have social purpose in mind, is key to a lot of what I do, even though I might take some photographs of really difficult situations. I'm not necessarily pursuing it with an agenda, except to get the best shot that I can. And do keep in mind too that geography and photography have long been intertwined from the early days of National Geographic, publishing the first photos of Machu Picchu, for example, and look at the photography in there today. So uh, not too much of a stretch in my mind to be documenting life on the streets and connecting it to urban, economic, cultural geography and things. So you'll note that the format that I work in will be the square prints, always monochrome. And the reason I do that is because in the old days of shooting with a twin lens reflex camera and using 120 film, I actually even have my family's old Brownie from the 1920s, and that used 120 film that gave you those square negatives. So that's the format that I keep to this day. All right, so jumping into Bangladesh then. One of the main drivers of the Bangladeshi economy, even today, is the rickshaw and the bicycle. It is still the main source of transportation over there. It is still the cheapest form of transportation over there. If you want to send packages or have food delivered or whatever, you can always turn to the rickshaws. They may cost $1 per trip. Uh, I think on average I was spending about 100 taka, which would have been $1 to uh, ride the rickshaws all over the place. And the rickshaws actually do tend to be fairly safe, is at least what I have found, because these guys do not want to get plowed. Okay. The moto rickshaws, those guys tend to think they're in some sort of demolition derby, and those are really interesting to ride in. But in terms of general safety, this is the rickshaw tends to be a really good way to go. And here, this traffic jam, you see all the rickshaws. This is right near one of the main shopping districts, the Bushandara shopping district in Dhaka. And just row after row of the rickshaws, and traffic was so tied up because of all these guys. It was really insane. You use the rickshaws and the bicycles to move construction materials. And so you see this individual moving pipe. This was down in the city of Chittagong, further south than Dhaka. And this recycler with all the fans. Once again, this was Chittagong. I mean, you'll catch them moving refrigerators and brand new televisions and things like this. And sometimes it takes a couple of people to move things. Now, these guys were actually about to head up an incline, and over maybe half a mile, the road actually climbed about 6 feet. So these guys had a very tough task ahead of them, and they were going to be pushing that entire way, as was this individual with all the rebar. I can only imagine how heavy this was. And he was actually alone doing this. I mean, Bangladesh is still using lots of manual labor, and this individual moving what appeared to be tons of plastic buckets, although I couldn't be too sure they were sealed up. And this guy was moving large, heavy wooden pieces of furniture like cabinets and benches and things. Then again, traffic is so bad, even if you had like a moving van, I don't know that it would do much good. The recycler, and you'll note that he's not wearing any shoes. He has no safety gear at all. And he goes around, collects garbage, and pulls out the recyclable materials, throws them in the bag in the back. All right, so looking at labor now, I went to South Dhaka, and let me pause this for 1 second. I want to spend a little bit longer talking about this one. I took a tour of South Dhaka, and you actually have to cross the Buriganga River. And after crossing the river, I went to the Dhaka shipyard. And then behind the shipyard were a whole bunch of small factories, dimly lit, dingy. And I walk into one of these factories, by the way, with two cameras strapped around me. I mean, this was not hidden on my part. I mean, absolutely open. I could have walked in anywhere I wanted and photographed whatever I wanted. And I walk into this one factory, and there's like an 8 or 9 year old kid on the floor working. And then there were some girls off to the left that off frame that were working as well. And they had to have been somewhere between 8 and 10 as well. And this is a nail factory. This factory was making roofing nails. And this woman also working in the roofing nail factory, a different one than the one I just showed you. But, you know, this is how this woman spends her life, and she's making maybe 30 cents an hour if she's lucky. And then just the row of women in this other factory, and that's how they're going to spend their working lives on the floor there, just in this dingy, dimly lit factory for pennies an hour. And this is the reality of South Dhaka. This guy is in a different factory making the covers for the rickshaws. And I just thought that was an incredible image to get. So I was very happy with how this one turned out. And this individual moving bricks, carrying bricks on his head, moving things from the brick pile on the left over to wherever he was taking them. I don't recall at this moment. But this is absolutely backbreaking work, and it's amazing to see the resiliency of the Bangladeshi people. And it's like this throughout the entire country. So, okay, now you may have seen a video of this boat or a boat very similar to this just within the past week on the Buriganga River. one of these boats, these brick carriers, actually collided with a ferry, and the brick boat went down within maybe 10 seconds time. It sank. I'm not sure if it's the same exact boat here or not, but something very similar. And you'll note that they load this boat up with all these bricks, and then when it arrives across the river, they have to offload it, and everything is being carried on their heads. And it is really surreal to watch because, of course, all of this stuff would be automated over here. Now, I mentioned that I got to go to the Dhaka shipyard. When you're standing in North Dhaka in the old city, you look across the river and you see these ferries and other ships that are being worked upon. And let me pause this for one more second. They do some work in the shipyards to repaint, repair the hulls, etc. These are not the ocean-going vessels. The most notorious of the shipyards, the ones where people are constantly being maimed, injured, and killed, those happen to be in Chittagong, and they have such a bad reputation that they have been closed to visitors for quite a while. You can still go to Dhaka, into the Dhaka shipyard, and wander around freely, and you'll see many of the same things that Chittagong has always gotten such a bad rap for. Ships still use lead paint, for example. Ships are still using asbestos and stuff. And here these guys are hammering the old paint off the hull of the ship because they're going to repaint it. They have to do this every 2 years. And no safety gear. You know, they may throw a bandana over their mouth and nose, but there's no safety gear whatsoever for these guys. So they're breathing in all that lead paint and whatever else. And here's just a different view of them working to peel all that paint off of the ships. And of course, if this were being done in the US down in Brownsville, they'd be in dry dock with moon suits on and all that protective gear, and they'd be making quite a bit of money for doing it, as they should. Now, you see the Burraganga River in the background, and that is Old Dhaka across the river. You see a ferry sort of in the center of the image, and then you see one of the cargo vessels that's in this dry dock in the shipyard immediately behind the building. The individuals here are called loaders. And what they have to do is move these huge metal sheets, and these will eventually be patched into the hull and things. So it takes a team of men, and they have to pick this sheet up that can weigh a couple of tons, and they will eventually place that sheet on their heads. There is an individual called a chanter, and the chanter is actually going to be calling out steps basically for all these guys to sync up to. Because if somebody steps out of sync, what happens is the entire thing can collapse and kill or maim them. So there is this fascinating sort of morbid beauty to this. I'm not sure how to even describe it appropriately, but these guys have to take this multi-ton sheet of metal, get it on their heads, and move it. And it is just, I mean, truly backbreaking. And these guys make nothing. But a couple more photos of the loaders here. And there, if you go online, there's video of the Chittagong shipyard, for example, where they actually do show these guys carrying these things. I mean, the videos are fascinating, but to actually be able to see it in person is incredible. And these guys working under the hull, I believe the one guy was welding or sanding, and of course, no protective gear whatsoever. I mean, it's really sad to see. And, you know, here's a welder, and he doesn't have any sort of protective gear. He has a pair of sunglasses on. So I can only imagine what that does to his vision over time, right? And coming out of the shipyard, they actually repair the propellers and recycle ship parts and repair ship parts and things. And then these will go back onto the cargo vessel that you saw. Here they actually take ship parts and they try to extract the precious metals out of the electronics. And this guy, of course, has open-toed sandals on and no other sort of safety gear. And here they're melting down all these electronic components for recycling purposes. And so this is starting all those factories just outside of the shipyard in South Dhaka. And here he is heat treating a propeller. And I didn't do any sort of editing to this. There was so much smoke in the room that it just sort of creates this cartoon-like image. Okay, so the street market. Now, this particular woman, she spent her life peeling a root, and I forget the name of the particular vegetable, but this root. And I would catch her early in the morning, and she'd start peeling this root. I'd come back in the early afternoon, she'd still be out there peeling this root. In the evening, she'd still be there peeling this root. Then I'd go out maybe 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, and she'd be sleeping in that same spot. And if I'd get up overnight because I'm a bit of an insomniac, I'd go out for a walk and she'd still be sleeping in that same spot. I mean, her life was this root and sleeping in this one location. And here she is she's peeling a root and she has all those other ones that she's going to be peeling. And I only ever saw her with the one outfit too. So And so, while the status of women has improved greatly in Bangladesh over the years, there's still a need for a lot of improvement. Um, this guy with his chickens in the street market, it's one of those, hey, take my photo, which I obliged. And you could buy a chicken from the guys in the background, and then they would butcher it for you right in front. And they were kind of clowning for the camera. And I think Bangladesh is a really misunderstood country. I mean, the people are overly friendly. Uh, Here, just at a street market, the fish and this entire row is nothing but fish. But yeah, the people are extremely friendly, and the attitude is like, well, you're American. What are you doing here? Um, which they always seem to get a kick out of. Just a few more views of the markets. And the fish vendors had a fight, and they were actually throwing punches, and some of them ended up bloody. And I just found that to be strange because it was 110 out, and they're having a fight, and just clowning for the camera. And the last 4 days I was in Bangladesh, the heat index was 120. And I really did not want to move, even though I had to. The knife sharpeners. I spent a lot of my early career working on Mexico, of all places, and working in Mexico frequently. And I would always focus on the peasant markets, the street markets, and things. And uh, it just is sort of natural for me to go to these marketplaces when I'm traveling abroad. So, plus, this was right around the corner from the hotel I was staying at one point. So, okay, now the Rohingya. For those of you in Chicago, you may know that there is a Rohingya Culture Center up at Devon Avenue in California. We do have a number of Rohingya refugees in the Chicago area, and I have long been involved in Rohingya issues. The Rohingya are a Muslim ethnic group out of Burma, and they have always been discriminated against by the Burmese government. The Burmese government refuses to recognize them as Burmese. The Burmese government passed a Citizenship Act listing 40 some odd groups that are considered to be Burmese and excluded the Rohingya. And there has been a genocide, an internationally recognized, a UN recognized genocide of the Rohingya by the Burmese government. So 1 million Rohingya fled to Bangladesh. And so if you go to Cox's Bazar in southern Bangladesh, which is known for, it's known as like the longest natural beach in the world. As you head south of Cox's Bazar, you end up in the Rohingya camps, the refugee camps. And technically, you're not supposed to be in there, okay? But maybe a little cash can get you access, and it may or may not have gotten me access. I won't say. But to be able to go to the Rohingya refugee camps was an incredible experience for me because of all the work I've done over the years. And so this next series of photos actually comes from the Rohingya camps. Saw this kid walking down the road with the fan over his head. And this Rohingya refugee has set up a little restaurant basically, and he's making snacks for traditional Rohingya snacks. And these two Rohingya kids just sitting on the street. Now, I do need to mention that the Rohingya and the Bangladeshi people do not necessarily have a great relationship. Um, this Rohingya kid playing with a machete, which doesn't seem like the brightest idea to me, but who am I to say, right? But the Bangladeshis and the Rohingya don't necessarily have a great relationship. This is up at one of the sites where they actually do have clean water. And so each of the camps may only have one location where clean water is available. And the typically the girls are the ones that have to walk around carrying all these water buckets, and they have to make multiple trips a day to fill up so their families have water to cook and drink. So I mentioned the problems between the Bangladeshis and the Rohingya. You're seeing some of that here in Chicago with the Venezuelans today, and some of the social unrest that you're seeing in that regard, and the commentary about the Venezuelans. And this is still in the Rohingya camp. The Bangladeshis will say that the Rohingya have brought increased crime and unrest and all these problems into the country, and please get them out and back into Burma as soon as possible. Uh, there have been talks of repatriation, but nothing has happened to this point. And to be honest with you, the Rohingya don't want to be here. They want to actually be back in their home territory, but they'd like to have a safe existence. Rohingya child with the water jug. And these guys, this is a Rohingya snack shop, all traditional Rohingya snacks that are being sold here. And I do hope I'm moving at a good pace for all of you. And here in the camp, they were dividing up meat on the ground. But I there were too many people on the other side. I could not get a decent shot of this. And then selling poultry on the other side of that stall. Well, the guy in the foreground is talking on his phone. All right, and then just some street views of Bangladesh. Now, I always found this hysterical. You'd walk around and you'd look up, and there were just these masses of cables. Uh, and I always was asking, how on earth do you fix anything? You know, I'd hate to be the person that had to go up there and try to straighten this mess out. Well, this guy actually had to do that. Fortunately, this mass of cables wasn't as bad as what I just showed you, but he's climbing this bamboo ladder 15, 20 feet up, and of course, he's in nothing but sandals. This is in South Dhaka, and this is a bridge that's crossing a dry canal. This bridge is totally falling apart. No guardrails left on the near side of this bridge. Down below, it is nothing but garbage. Nothing but garbage. And the smell was as horrific as anything you would ever want to encounter. Can you imagine what that must be like when the monsoon season hits and this canal actually fills up with water and all this garbage is just uh, floating all over the place? I crossed this makeshift bridge over yet another field of garbage, and I was going to check out some residences off frame to the left, and this was in Dhaka. This building in the foreground had totally collapsed, and I caught this individual sleeping in the rubble. I don't know the story of why the building collapsed. This is also Dhaka. This is right outside the National Mosque. The National Mosque would be off frame to the right. The building that you're seeing here is some sort of stadium. And what really caught my eye was, okay, all the garbage on the street, the dogs sleeping on the street, and the people sleeping out there, including people who were sleeping right out of the middle of the road. I mean, there's still a major housing crisis in Bangladesh. And these guys sleeping on the median. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and this was Dhaka. The barber in South Dhaka. Sometimes I just see people carrying things or something, and I think it'd make a good photo. So that's why you're seeing some of these. But for me, absolutely a fascinating country. And I can't wait to return. I still have some work to do over there. The chickens and poultry being brought to market. These are motorized bikes, and they will usually have two individuals with them, and they just go flying. It's insane how fast these things go. And that second person oftentimes will actually sit on the top of the cages in the back, and it just makes for a real interesting sight. And this woman who got into 2 fights in 2 days down in Chittagong. This guy riding atop the truck with furniture up there with him. This is the guy who took me across the Burraganga River for about 5 cents, 10 cents to get across the river. Down in Chittagong now, Bangladesh at this point is 91% Muslim, but headed down to Chittagong and found a Hindu community and attended an RT, one of their regular services. I slipped him $1, asked if I could take his photo, and he obliged. Same with him. And then the Dhaka's main train station here. And we're going to end with just a few photos from the train terminal. But I did not this time get to see all the people riding atop the train, as you may have seen video of from Bangladesh, but that was not happening while I was there. But I did spend a little bit of time at the Dhaka station, just for photography. Not, I didn't really have any other purpose for going there. Did not ride the rail. And this right here, this is the last photo I have for you. So that is a look at Bangladesh.
Thank you again for presenting, Keith. This was a real treat. While we wait for folks to enter their questions into the Q&A box, I'd like to take a moment to go through a few announcements. All right. All right, so following February 26th, we have the next GSC GIS teacher meetup. The theme of this one will be Survey 123. You can go ahead and scan that QR code that will take you to the registration page to get set up for the meeting. Otherwise, you can visit our website at geographicsociety.org, and all of our events are posted there for you to visit. Our next event we have is the next Geography Trivia Night. This will be Tuesday, March 5th at Leader Bar at 7 p.m. You're welcome to bring your friends and enjoy an evening of really great trivia and drinks and food. We also have the Geography Career Fair coming up on April 2nd. This will be at DePaul University's Lincoln Park campus located on Sheffield Avenue. This will be from 6 to 7:30 in room 314A and 314B. So please come if you're a student or interested in learning more about careers in geography. And we always thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to sign up for our mailing list, if you're not a part of it already, you can go ahead and scan this code here.
Okay,
All
so
right.
let me first say hi to Marianne and Joe and Judy. And I'm looking at some of the questions here. So Linda was asking about the photo outside of the mosque where the people were sleeping on the street and why it was so light at that point. That was actually, well, probably 7 a.m. while I was out there. I was actually trying to catch them in prayer at the mosque. National Mosque in Dhaka is really nothing to see. If you're looking for a good photo opportunity, like for instance, if you go to Abu Dhabi, you have to go see the Grand Mosque. I mean, that is insane. And the one in Dhaka is nothing like that. It's not even worth, as a tourist, it's not worth making the trip. Okay. Judy, not many women in the photos. That's just what I selected for this. I have plenty of other photos featuring a lot of women. That was just personal selection for this. And what other issues in Myanmar are affecting Bangladesh? Well, Myanmar has launched several missiles into Bangladesh, and they have had their border guards actually firing guns into Bangladesh, and people have been injured and killed. I'm amazed that hasn't blown up anymore. I don't understand why this hasn't been such an international incident, but that tends to be the major thing right now. And Judy also asked about the food. I will say this, the food scene in Bangladesh is incredible, absolutely incredible. I don't know that I would feel safe eating in the street market, for example, but to go to the restaurants, I mean, they take a lot of pride in their restaurant scene. So if you ever end up in Dhaka, for example, go to the neighborhood of Dan Mandi, go to Gulshan, and you can have an absolutely stunning culinary experience and relatively cheap too. Uh, Marianne, what can they buy for $1? You ooh, $1. Well, let me give you an example. I'm going to switch it from $1. I was on a rickshaw and the driver misunderstood where I wanted to go, so he had to do an extra loop around. And I gave him the equivalent of $5, which was probably $3.50 more than this ride normally would have been. And this guy was so happy because he was going to be able to eat a real dinner right then and there. And he actually wanted me to stay with him and eat. And I couldn't, of course, but it's, you can certainly buy some snacks on the street. You can certainly buy a soda and things. I bought a 12 pack of Tylenol, well, the generic equivalent, the paracetamol, and the 12 pack cost me 12 cents. So yeah, you can certainly still get quite a bit for $1 in Bangladesh, but I was staying at a five-star boutique hotel in Danmandi because I was trying to stay. This is after I got back into Dhaka the second time, because I started in Dhaka to go to the cemetery and stay with Samsul's family, and then I started meandering around the country, came back to Dhaka. And the second time in Dhaka, I stayed at a five-star boutique hotel for $22 a night, and that included breakfast. So still cheap. Did I eat the street food? Some ice cream, but that was about it. Do I experience emotional issues with the plight of your subject? Ooh, hey Jackson. Um, uh, not not with this. I just photographed something in Chicago a couple of weeks ago that really unnerved me because I was 200 feet away when it happened. And when those two kids got murdered on Wabash, I was 200 feet away when that happened. So the photos I have from that are devastating. And yeah, that bothered me a lot. But uh, no, nothing from Bangladesh. You know, a lot of the street work I do, yeah, it's tough, but not extreme like what I witnessed a few Fridays ago.
Mm.
Why is there a lack of safety precautions? Ooh, okay. Um, Simple. It's look, Bangladesh is a country that was born of genocide. I mean, it was originally East Pakistan after the partition, and there was a Bangladeshi man who actually won the popular vote to become the prime minister of Pakistan as a whole. And the Pakistanis wouldn't let him take office. And so that starts Bangladesh and Pakistan on their separate paths. Pakistan sends all of its military into Bangladesh, and you have the genocide of 1971, Operation Searchlight. And you had immediate brain drain, and you know, a country being born of genocide is probably not going to be doing well from the get-go. So Bangladesh grabbed any job opportunities it could, including all the sewing machines, the textile garment manufacturing, and things like tearing down ships. So when these ships hit 20 years of age or whatever, and they need to be, they're no longer economically viable to be at sea, they bring them to Bangladesh, they beach them, and these guys start going in and ripping them apart by hand. And what you do is to make as much money as you can, you don't put money into safety equipment. And unfortunately, you have places in Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh that are still doing it this way. And these workers make nothing. Um, all right, so let me see. Is Jackson's question about pursuit of the young lady, Jabin is her name, quite well. I hope she's going to be here within the year. Um, gangs controlling the areas, nothing that I saw, nothing that I'm familiar with. And the cemeteries, I don't know enough about that, Jackson, to answer that appropriately. I don't have a clue.
These were some great questions. Thank you guys for participating. This was wonderful. And yet again, this was a fantastic presentation, Keith. Your photographs were remarkable. And I'm very happy to have witnessed it. This was recorded, so we will post this on our YouTube page for others to view. And we appreciate everyone's questions. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.